Welcome to The State of Us. Real people with honest opinions and the future of responsible media. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
Medicare overpaid $9 billion to insurers. You heard right. Medicare overpaid $9 billion, averaging about $1 billion a year in overpayments since 2006. President Trump is looking to possibly declare an emergency in order to build his wall, and Turkey wants to keep the United States in Syria. We got a lot to go over here. There was a number of things. These were all bottom fold of the Wall Street Journal over the weekend. But first, why do you care about any of this stuff? Well, the Medicare overpaid $9 billion. Those are your tax dollars that they overpaid to the big insurance companies. So hopefully you care about that, because $1 billion a year in overpayments seems like we could probably do something to not overpay quite so much. Or at least when we overpay, get some of it back would be nice. President Trump and declaring an emergency to build a wall. Well, two different ways you could care. Obviously, if you don't want the wall, then you'd probably care about this. And if you do want the wall, then you'd probably care about this. So we'll talk about the feasibility of actually doing that. And then we'll also look, of course, following up on our continued coverage of Syria, the president's original plans to pull us out of Syria. Now we're looking at keeping troops there and maybe even deepening our military influence in Syria. So how was there such a reversal? We'll look at all of that, get you the update. We'll have to be moving out today. But of course, we couldn't begin a conversation on such critical topics without the one and only,
your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Yeah, be amazed, folks. Not only did the government overpay, they didn't get the extra back. That's the amazing thing there. And then, can we just say, instead of President Trump, from the liberal redneck, can we say, dictator Trump? When we talk about declaring an emergency, I think he used the term military eminent domain. Isn't that another word for takeover? Hey, I think that was the phrase that he used.
It might be within his powers.
Military. No, it's not.
It might be.
There were many, many government officials who stepped up and said, that's not legal. But anyway,
well, we'll find out.
Military eminent domain. There you go, folks.
Well, we'll see. So actually that brings
otherwise known as Med.
Med. Okay. Is that the new nickname?
Which takes us right into, no, I'm trying to segue there into the Medicare, right?
I got it. Yep.
Medicine, Medicare.
Puns. Okay. So one of the things, we've got we're going to be adding over as we get through January here, kind of to our goals for 2018. But I came up with one over the weekend that I want to add now. We don't have any on the agenda. I think we have a couple that are carrying over from last year, but the one I want to add, just keep this in mind today, guys, is Lance and I are going to try to, as long as we're still searching for this third viewpoint, because we don't want to be dishonest and pretend that we have this other viewpoint that we don't have. But at the same time, we're both plenty smart enough to be able to at least help you game out the scenario a little bit. So we'll try to do a little bit more of that this year, at least until we find somebody who can defend that side of things so that we don't have to. Does that sound good, Lance?
Yeah, I can do that.
We can do that.
I've always told you I could.
Well, that's what you did in class. So, right. I mean, that you were...
I can give the other side.
You frustrated everybody because nobody knew what you thought. So we remember.
Then you said I had to be myself, like, I don't know, 5 years ago or something.
I know. And then you're like, shoot.
Man, I want to do that.
I got to be myself. Know about all that. Okay. So we'll start with Medicare overpaid insurers billions. Billions.
With a B.
Year after year, most of the estimates that the insurance companies have provided to the government have turned out to be wrong. In particular, they've turned out to be wrong in the particular way that, thanks to Medicare's arcane payment rules, results in more revenue for health insurers. And that's an investigation by the Wall Street Journal that ultimately unveiled this. As a consequence, the insurers have kept $9.1 billion more in taxpayer funds than they would have had if their estimates had been accurate from 2006 to 2015. 9 years, $9.1 billion in overpayment, a little more than $1 billion a year, according to Medicare data. Okay, so this is You can go fact check this. Go check Medicare. They'll tell you that they overpaid. Those payments have largely been hidden from view, though, since Medicare's prescription drug program was launched more than a decade ago. And they're an example of how the secrecy of the $3.5 trillion U.S. healthcare system promotes and obscures high spending. This goes on, though, to explain, because this is important. We don't want to just, bash the insurance companies without giving them an opportunity to defend themselves. They did actually respond to this, and they said in multiple areas that they did their best to accurately project costs, and that they were frequently audited by outside actuaries who would determine that their estimates were indeed accurate, and that Medicare has audited them multiple times between 2016 and 2015. So it's not just Medicare just said, oh, okay, no problem. They did actually try to audit these, and they did decide, the decision was made that the estimates were accurate. The other thing is that the way the deal's set up, I know this is where we get to me, that's not as important as this next part, which is that the way it works basically, right, is Medicare, okay, they make payments to these insurers based on the estimate. And then at the end of the year, based on what all the costs total were, that's where they can look at the difference between the two. Here's where the problem comes in, though. The deal, Lance, is that the insurers can keep up to 5% of their overestimated costs because we're nice, I guess.
That's what I was gonna say. I don't have a problem with anything. I don't have a problem with overbidding. Don't have a problem with any of that part. But okay, hey, guess what? Okay, we figured out your final bill, and you overpaid us, so you get it back.
Yep.
Okay, right? But no, you get to keep it.
Right.
How would people, this is tax season, right? Right?
Yes.
How would the millions and millions of Americans who get money back on their taxes, which I haven't in years. So, I guess, but that's a philosophical fight between me and the government. I don't want to get money back because then the government's using my money for 15 months, and I don't want them to use my money. I want to owe them at the end of the year. And I know but we'll get into that another time. But really, folks, just, hey, if you get a tax return back, just donate it to the government because you overestimated how much you owed them. And so just out of the goodness of your heart, let them keep it.
Yeah. Because
that's what the government is doing with the tax dollars that you gave them for Medicare, for these insurance companies. So I cannot, that makes absolutely no sense, no business sense that I've ever heard a company saying, well, yeah, we overpaid you. Just keep it. It's all right. It's no big deal.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll just use 2015 as the example. Insurers overestimated costs, Lance, by $2.2 billion, and they kept about $1.6 billion of it after paying back $1.1 billion to the government.
So they already paid some of it back. Why don't they pay all of it back?
I don't know.
Who writes the deal and says, hey, if you overestimate, you get to keep 5% or 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yep. So that's the real kicker is we'll
pay you back some of it, but we're keeping some of it.
Right. For reasons
unbeknownst to anybody.
Yes, exactly. Perfectly. I couldn't have said it any better myself. Then, let's just say for a moment, because I think this is an all-American thing we should be upset about. I don't think this has anything to do with Trump or Democrats or anything like that. I mean, my goodness, right? Trump supporters, you want to build this wall that costs $5.6 billion. Well, maybe if we hadn't given the government if the government hadn't given $9.1 billion of our dollars to insurance companies who didn't need it, then we could build that stinking wall. And Lance, we'd have some money left over to do what I want to do, which is fund the Coast Guard.
There you go.
So, we could just do it all. But instead, we're given $1 billion a year. I mean, that's the real live data, right? About $1 billion a year since 2006. Just here's a check to the insurance companies for what? Nothing.
Everybody's admitting it.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's trying to hide it.
Nope. Now, the companies say, though, that the pattern of overestimates that the journal has identified is the result of unpredictable drug prices by pharmaceutical makers. Insurers say they strive to make accurate bids, which are certified by actuaries. Medicare reviews and approves the bids and sometimes audits them, insurers point out.
And again, I'm okay with that. I'm not saying they're trying to rip anybody off. They're trying to do a good job. They're trying to give the government a real number. Okay, this is what it's going to cost, because then the government can figure in the cost of the insurance companies are trying to tell the government what it's going to cost for the coverage, so that the government can, figure out what they need to put in that line item. That's all well and good. I understand that. That's great. But then if I overpay you, give me my money back.
Right.
That's, again, I have no argument that they're trying to rip anybody off, except for the fact that in the contract it says they get to keep a certain percentage of the overage. So why wouldn't they bid high?
Yeah.
So
that's the problem.
That's where
they have an incentive
to overbid.
Yeah.
Because, we gave you $1 billion back, but we're keeping another $1 billion because the contract says we can't.
Yep.
So of course I'm going to bid high.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks.
Well, and typically, right, the line of thought would be if you're, a contractor, just say you're going to go do a building project, right? Typically, you're going to want to bid high, come in low, because that makes the customer happy. In this case, though, there's no incentive to come in low, because it's like, well, we just get to keep it anyway.
Right.
So why not come in high? I mean, it's like there's no reason for them in this scenario to try to save money or not save money, because they just get to keep a big portion of it for, again, basically nothing. Now, it is important, though, to give credit where credit is due, and the Trump administration and Obama administration both get credit. So we're going to talk about who to blame, because really it comes down to Congress. Get this. The Obama and Trump administrations have both tried and proposed to slash the reinsurance subsidy and increase plans' risk for patients with very high drug costs. The change can be made only by an act of Congress, and legislators haven't actively considered it. Despite that, you've had two administrations who have said they want to. Because why, Lance? Because if we touch Medicare, people might get mad. But again, why would people get mad about this? Let's not.
I don't know, because we're not, I guess.
Because the insurance companies pay the lawmakers to not say anything about this.
Sure.
Is that what it comes? That's what they're using that $1 billion for. So here we go, right? Okay. Just Cam Pierce conspiracy for a second, Lance. You and I overpay. We give our tax money to Medicare, who overpays the insurance companies, who in turn use the money that we overpaid to get lobbyists to convince our members of Congress to not fix it, so that we keep overpaying.
So you're paying the lobbyists.
Paying.
That's where the lobby money comes from.
Lance and I, and you at home, we're all paying to pay. That's what's happening. We're paying for the right to overpay. Isn't that good?
There you go. Gotta love America.
Ooh. I'm sorry, but somebody please send us a comment on the other side. I know I just said that was our goal, but I don't know what the other side here is, other than the insurance companies are super smart and the government's super dumb. Because, I mean, I don't blame the insurance companies, as I think we've identified. I mean, why wouldn't they do that? If TrueChat's going to make a deal with somebody and they say, yeah, it's fine if you want to keep, extra that we pay you because we're nice. I mean, Oh yeah, sure. Absolutely. It's
going to cost you, this contract is going to cost you, $3,000. Oh, well, I sent you a check for $5,000. Just keep the extra $2,000.
Yeah. I don't need it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
thanks.
What am I going to say? No, take it back. I don't want it.
Well, yes, I would hope you would.
Yeah.
Ethically, morally, I would hope that you would.
I guess. But in this case, the government's saying we don't want it back. Right? I mean, they're saying, no, I want you to have it. I wrote a contract and agreed to let you keep it. It's not even like it's an accident, though. I mean, and that's what Lance and I are talking about, is these hypothetical, like, oops, we overpaid. This is like, no, the contract says that we're okay with you keeping it. So enough, I guess, ranting and raving on that. The solution's simple. an act of Congress that changes how this is done so that, again, we just get all the money back that we overpay.
There you go.
Instead of only getting part of it. Or, I'm even okay with 0.1% them getting to keep because of the administrative headache of having to retransfer the funds back or whatever. I'm okay covering that cost of it. I get that, but not $1 billion a year.
Next. What's next, dude? Time.
Yeah, I know.
Keeping you on coverage here.
And that's the friendly redneck liberal's job. He's got to keep us focused. Okay. Trump may declare an emergency on the wall, Lance. I told Lance before the show, didn't I? This was, as soon as I read this headline over the weekend, I was like, House of Cards. Mm-hmm. Cause, for those of you who watch it or those of you that don't, then I'm sure the scenario where he wants to fund a program, that being Frank Underwood, the fictional president in this series, wants to fund a program called America Works, that gives anybody a job who wants a job, and Congress refuses to fund it. So he says, fine, I will declare a state of emergency and use FEMA to administer the program. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I didn't like in the Journal article is it says, quote, it isn't clear how Mr. Trump would fund a wall under that scenario. And Mr. Trump would almost certainly face legal challenges. Yes, he'll face legal challenges, but it's unclear how he'd do it. The president has the right to declare quote unquote state of emergency, right, in the country. He has that right. That's part of his powers. So step one is we do that. And step two then is we use the powers granted to the president once a state of emergency has been declared, like deploying FEMA, nationalizing the National Guard, all that kind of stuff. Again, you can, we'll face legal challenges, all this other stuff. I get all that comes, but I'm saying how it's done is quite simple. The president takes these actions and then it's challenged legally as to whether or not he actually can do that.
Right.
Or whether or not it's a perversion of the idea of, state of emergency.
Right.
So I think that's pretty straightforward. Just to be clear with everybody, though.
It's like anything else. He can do a lot of things. Is it legal, and who's going to stand up to him, and how long is it going to take to fight back, and, where's he going to get the money, and all of those arguments, the pushback. But you're right. He can do everything, but everybody's coming out and saying, dude, that's not the way this works.
It's not quite how it goes.
But
he's still allowed to try.
But that hasn't stopped him for 2 years. So.
Yeah. Mr. Trump said he hoped the shutdown, quote, doesn't go on even beyond a few more days. But he went on to say, and he told congressional leaders that the shutdown could last for months or even years if Democrats don't agree to fund the wall. Again, just the facts of the situation.
He says stuff all the time.
I know.
He changes daily.
So what kind of stake can we put in that?
Exactly.
On the flip side, though, for those of us who'd like to blame Trump for the shutdown, I think if you want to know where blame goes right now, it's the United States Senate. Specifically,
yes,
our leader in the United States Senate.
We alluded to that last week in that the House has passed something and
it's the Senate's job.
Senator McConnell will not vote on it. He will not bring the vote.
You want to blame somebody, it's McConnell.
Right.
I know Trump's doing a lot of posturing, but at the end of the day, he's not doing anything at the moment to hold any of it up. All he said is that he won't sign it if it comes to his desk. Okay, we'll send it to his desk and find out.
Exactly right.
But
do your job as the head of the Senate and have a vote. And if it passes the Senate and it passes the House, then it goes to the president, and then let the president sign it or veto it or let it sit there for 10 days and become law. There are all kinds of options here, folks. And that's what we learned in school. And it's the way the system was set up. Use the system. The system's in place. It's worked for a long, long time. Use the system.
Yep. And the House did that on their very first day, basically. So why the Senate refuses, it goes back to, I think, Lance, pretty basic logic. If he knows it's going to be a no vote, then why not get everybody on the record who's a no vote? Unless you're afraid that it might pass, why hold it up? There's a game called Secret Hitler. I don't know if you've seen it, Lance.
Don't know that one.
It's a new game, and it's a historical game, and it actually follows the kind of the way that Hitler came to power, kind of secretly, how the fascists rose against the liberals in Germany and kind of were very devious in getting it all done. And the very interesting thing that that game does a good job of teaching is that in democratic processes, there is no reason to prevent people from having their opinion heard. There's no reason to not take the time to let everybody have their opinion heard and to have public votes, and that there's no reason for that. Now, if you're looking to be a dictatorship or to be fascists or to control and manipulate the people, then you have every reason to not let representatives of the people be heard.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that McConnell's a fascist or a dictator or anything like that. All I'm getting at is it lays it out pretty clearly that there shouldn't be any reason he's afraid to let it go to a vote unless he thinks that it might pass.
Yep.
And that would undermine his authority.
Yep.
Because then the president's not going to like him. And of course, the Democrats don't like him.
Because then the president's going to have to veto it, and the president doesn't want to have to veto it. Or the president's going to say, well, and here's Trump. Well, it passed both houses. I guess I have to sign it. I don't want to sign this. And you can see now. So when Mitch McConnell runs in 2020 or 2022, whenever he's up,
Yep.
But that's what we're playing right now. And we're playing with the American people's pocketbook.
Mm-hmm. And the 420,000 some odd individuals who.
That's what I'm saying. We're playing with them, with their pocketbook. And the thousands of small businesses that are open and do business with outside of these places or in these places where government workers spend their money.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget that. Yeah. It's not just the government workers. It's all those places where those government workers spend their money, where they buy their lunch, where they get their dry cleaning done, of course. Okay. And those people will never get this money back. If you're running that small lunch counter next to, where the TSA drivers report to work or whatever, you're never getting this money back.
Right. Well, because it's not like if the government workers get their back pay, which they probably will, once they get their back pay, it's not like they're going to show up at their place of lunch, right, and say, well, I want to buy 30 lunches from the past however many days I wasn't here, didn't come in for.
Nope.
I mean, of course not, right? They're not going to do that. 420,000 employees who are deemed essential are working without pay. So these aren't people who have been furloughed, who have been told don't come in and you're not getting paid. These are people who were told you have to show up and we're not going to pay you. So
right. Well, and it's just, but we won't even get into how it's affecting the Native Americans on the reservations and the health care and the food supplies and all these other things that are part of
that aren't just the work
treaties that the United States government has signed with these people and they're not honoring. So, but
there was that article.
The list can go on and on about that.
I handed you about how this drastically affects the Native American reservations because they're not deemed essential for I mean, right? Of course not. Of course they're not essential. Sending them their aid is not important. For all of you listening, I hope you can tell, obviously I'm being facetious and it's just ridiculous.
Right.
I mean, it's insane.
That this is,
we already subjugate them to, terribleness. And on top of that now, well, because lawmakers who really have never looked out for you, can agree on things that don't really have much to do with you anyway, you don't get your money that we said we'd give you.
Right.
Because we're shut down. So, but we can keep other government departments open because they're more important than the aid that gets set. So, Lance, let's talk about real quick here before we get on to our last thing, Syria. What we're working to do here on the State of Us. What's the mission at TrueChat, which is obviously...
Is it time for the mid-show reads?
It is.
Oh, well, here at TrueChat, our mission is... I'm all choked up about it. Is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. And I know I'm sometimes sound disrespectful towards our fearless leader, the president, but it is with much respect and First Amendment rights that I share my views.
Yes. Well, and I think it's important to hopefully that people get because this is challenging, especially when we're face to face with people we disagree with. We can get really defensive and upset, but remembering that I think that we're all passionate about these things. That's why we feel that's why we feel upset. Even like this guy I told Lance about that I saw at the Citizen, as much as I wanted to really dislike the man, at the same time too, I could tell he really was passionate about this. He really, even though I disagree completely with everything this man was saying about why he wanted to cancel his, subscription. Even though that was a conversation that was happening, I still appreciated that he obviously cared about what he was saying. He was trying to stand up for what he thought was right. And we're trying to do that in a way that, even though it may sometimes come off as we think the other side's dumb or whatever, it doesn't mean that we can't relate to feeling that way. That's the animation, I think, that sometimes, hopefully our listeners are sensing as animation, not so much as it is an attempt at, disrespect per se.
Exactly.
So the next thing, Turkey seeks U.S. aid in Syria, Lance. The Turkish requests are so extensive that if the U.S. is to fully meet them, the American military might be deepening its involvement in Syria instead of reducing it. And this is according to an official inside the administration. Obviously, that would frustrate President Trump's goal of transferring the mission of finishing off Islamic State to Turkey in the hope of forging an exit strategy for the U.S. military to leave Syria. So lo and behold, Lance, a last-minute savior may come in to save the day here, which is Turkey. Not us or dissenters against Trump, but Turkey says, well, if we're going to take over this mission, we want your help. And since you're kind of our ally, then, by extension, you need to give us the help, which may actually end up, which is just hard to believe, right? It may actually end up increasing our presence as opposed to decreasing it.
Because none of the leaders that be think that there's anything strong with the Turkish government or the Turkish troops to be able to do this. So not only will it cost us money to support them, along with weapons and artillery and everything else, but we may need the manpower to support them. So rather than us just do it, let's just go in, little Nike ad there. We just go in and send our troops in and we do the job. We may now need to spend even more money and still have troops there to support the Turkish government in their attempt to take over what we were already doing. Yeah, that's, the argument here, and I'll take the other side argument real quickly, but if it gets some of our troops out of harm's way, then that's good. But and
it probably will.
Right. It should, but it doesn't mean that we can take everybody out.
No.
Which is what the president said we were going to do. You can't take everybody out. So you're going to have to leave some people behind, and then it's going to cost us some money, which the president's reason for getting out of there was, well, we had accomplished our goal. Wasn't that what he said? We accomplished our goal. But, the plus side is if Turkey can take it over and we can spend money and we can give weapons to them and it saves American lives, then that would be the counter argument on why this is good. However, just think about what happened in Iraq and Saddam Hussein when you start giving people weapons to help you, and then all of a sudden the government leaders change and then they can start using those weapons against you. We've done that in the past. So there's the little, it's a gamble. Is this what we really want to do or not? So, but remember, the president has also pulled back on Syria on the troops leaving.
Yes.
So we don't know where that is right now either. I guess we need to ask Rush Limbaugh, Laura Ingraham, or Sean Hannity, because they seem to be running the government. Whatever they say seems to get the attention of the president.
Oh.
So maybe we need to ask those three what kind of wall we need.
But there is a potential upside, as you highlighted. Assuming that Turkey continues to view us as more good than bad, the United States, then everything's fine, because those weapons won't be used against us. They'll be used to affect what we're after trying to accomplish. But that's where the caveat comes in of it is a gamble, because there's a lot of these Middle Eastern countries where the regimes are not by any means in stone. And if something happens in Turkey where they're no longer very friendly to us, then the very weapons that we gave them might be.
And don't forget, Russia's still involved in Syria. So, yes. And the Turkish government's not extremely strong to stand up to the Russians either. So now do some of our weapons fall into the hands of the Russians, or do the Turks do what the Russians want once they get our weapons instead of what we wanted in Syria?
It's like a lot of things.
Because the Russians haven't left. They're staying, right?
Yeah. Because they want Syria, right? I mean, if they can, count Syria as
so
part
if
of
we
their
leave,
network,
it'll be easier for them to take it?
Well, of course.
Oh, okay.
Despite what Russia may tell you, they do actually have at least fear for the United States from a respect standpoint. Now, they may never admit that, but Putin isn't an idiot, because you don't get to stay ruler as long as he is and be a total idiot. He understands that he can't just break down the United States door if we're standing in his way. He can't just kill our troops and take it. I mean, he could, but that would be a very bad strategic move. That wouldn't,
Not smart on his part?
No.
Okay.
That wouldn't end well. Now, there have been instances in the past, few years where we've quote unquote accidentally killed some Russian operatives, where to Russia's credit, they really didn't overreact. I'm sure they would have liked to, but that goes back to, again, speaking to that there wasn't a lot of coverage of that stuff. In part because Russia didn't make a big stink, in part because Russia's not stupid and they know that one-on-one they can't take us, at least not in their current. So on a nuclear level, it's a whole different game, but I'm talking about, regular military.
Okay.
So yeah, if we leave, Lance, they don't care if they have to kill some Turks. We're going to march in there and it's going to be ours.
Some scary stuff.
Them in Crimea, expanding the empire, right? So back to the USSR. Someday, slowly but surely.
The Beatles would love that.
Would they? Okay. Yeah, I know. It's in their song.
Okay. Yeah.
I thought that was We Didn't Start the Fire. I thought there was something about the Soviet Union and
there is.
Billy Joel's.
Well, there's a lot of stuff about the Soviet Union because it's during that whole time period of the Cold War. There's a lot of stuff. But yes, the Beatles song.
Okay.
Back in the USSR.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I forget the age difference. Because you do listen to some good music pre-show.
Yeah. We got Queen Radio on. So.
Oh, is that what it was today?
That's what it's called. It's Queen Radio. It's a Spotify playlist where they play songs like Spotify. Yeah. Speaking of Spotify, Lance, what can people do? What can our listeners do with Spotify?
They can listen to us.
They can.
That and Stitcher and Apple Podcast and any place else that fine podcasts are found.
That's right.
They can check in all those places and listen to us.
We don't typically share
on the state of us
statistical information on air. But factoid for you, Lance, as we wrap up here. Spotify is the number one place that people listen to TrueChat, or this program. I can't speak to the others, but to the state of us, Spotify makes up a little over 60% of where people listen. So for all of you listening on Spotify, thank you so much for listening through that service. And for everybody else, it's the reason that we give you choice, right?
Nice for the other 40% that you pick something else.
That's right. Yeah. It's great. So at TrueChat.org on social media, let us know your thoughts for the state of us on TrueChat in Urbana, Ohio. I'm Justin T. Weller.
And I'm Lance Jackson.
As always, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time on The State of Us. Be the change.